If the game of creative director musical chairs fashion went through last year was good for anything other than internet drama, it was at least a clear signifier that luxury fashion is in the midst of major change. Or at least what they want us to see as change. Because it's been obvious that their reputation has been in jeopardy for a while now. And with the September shows coming up and with pressure still on for luxury brands to prove that they're recovering post-pandemic and post-industry slump, their singular focus on proving what makes luxury luxury and making that obvious to consumers is becoming clearer to see. So in this video, we're going to break down the moves some brands have been making to prove that luxury still exists, analyze whether this has been successful so far, and compare the brands you guys think have successfully rebranded to the ones I think have managed to do this, and reveal whether any of them pass my in-person quality inspection, which is maybe the most important part of the video since we all know how easily a badly secured button can tank a fashion empire. Let's get into it. Before we do, let me say welcome or welcome back to the channel. Hi, if you're new here, my name's Katie. I talk about fashion through the lens of politics, culture, and sustainability. If that sounds good to you, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. And let me just say a quick thank you to the sponsor of this video, Idol, who I'll be telling you about more later on. Okay, on to luxury fashion. Fashion's luxury reset was the dominating conversation last year. But even though those debut collections have come and gone, people inside the industry know that this is still a big topic and that we'd have to wait a while to see if the big luxury turnaround had done what it actually needed to do, which is revive the luxury fashion industry. The real work comes in the second and the third and the fourth collections, where designers have cemented their role and they've proven that they understand the workings of the house, and now they start to put their own spin on things and start to tackle the issues that they were brought in to fix. The biggest one is one we've spoken a lot about on this channel, which is the decline of luxury fashion. In fact, I did a whole video examining how the status of luxury fashion brands declined to the point of hurting the entire industry. Both of those videos were over a year ago, and I kind of want to do an update now to see if luxury fashion has managed to listen to those criticisms and maybe started on the path to redemption. Clearly, there's definitely been some steps towards this with all of the creative director reshuffling, but the clothes and who's designing them is only part of the job. And the role of marketing for a brand's image is just as, if not more important, which is why it's been so interesting to see how the social media of luxury fashion has evolved just in the past 12 months. And also, it's not my main motivation for making this video, but I definitely want to examine how we went from people online complaining about the cost of their Dior bags being exposed for $53 after their sweatshop scandal came out last year, to public opinion now being completely different a year on. It's like Jonathon Anderson's Dior can do no wrong, and I'm fascinated by how quickly that opinion has changed. Real quick, we need to refresh ourselves with the definition of luxury because this is the crux of the issue. There's a lot of characteristics that make up a luxury fashion brand, as we examined in the previous video. And the problem was that luxury fashion lost sight of a lot of these signifiers in the fight against ultra fast fashion, social media algorithms, and TikTok duping. And that's why brands have been so hell-bent in the last 12, 24 months on proving that they represent these things and on distancing themselves from the rest of the market to make us believe in luxury again. I'm going to split the evaluation of luxury's rebrand into two categories because I think whilst ultimately the success of a rebrand is going to rely on the sales of a product and whether people are actually buying it or not, investors are also hyper aware of marketing and the court of public opinion. So it makes sense to split our analysis into product and perception, and then bring them both together to examine which luxury fashion brands are rebranding well and which aren't. Starting then with perception, luxury fashion brands have been using their social medias to build back those signifiers of luxury, like proving their cultural cachet. Brands know they have to be able to prove they understand what people want right now. What's trendy, who's in and out, what's happening beyond the runways, and how they relate to all of that. It's a fine balancing act between catering to the masses by showing your expensive handbags on footballers and recognizable public faces, making sure the internet's boyfriend of the month is sitting front row at your shows, encouraging your creative directors to become celebrities themselves and lean into the reality TV-like culture of the fashion reshuffle, and catering to the elite, the very important customers that make up a lot of luxury's profits, by entering their social circuits and offering money can't buy experiences. If brands can understand what people want right now, understand what luxury is to people right now, and associate themselves with it, their desirability goes up. Along with their eagerness to prove part of the current culture, brands have also been focusing on showing their heritage. There's a reason everyone laughed when Zara brought up their archive, but for luxury fashion, it's actually quite an important signifier to reference your previous generations and show your audience that you have a history and you have a recognizable image. And maybe that's why brands have been focusing on showing their long-standing contributions to culture and their heritage in luxury, even as they connect themselves to the modern world. Because they understand that for luxury consumers nowadays, they value expertise and timelessness more than newness. Of course, one of the most obvious things luxury had to address was price. There's still videos that go viral like clockwork every month calling out a specific brand's incredibly outrageously priced item, and it will always do numbers on TikTok. But brands have definitely been concentrating more on getting people in at entry level with lower priced handbags and things like bag charms that don't cost people a lot of money but still carry the prestige of a brand. You still get obscenely expensive prices everywhere you look, but brands are starting to understand they can't rely on just ultra wealthy clients for their entire revenue. And that's why they've been so hell-bent on convincing consumers at every price point that luxury is worth the price tag. The thing is, you can't talk about the price of luxury and whether it's worth it without talking about the actual product you're selling. So we'll flip over to the other side of our analysis, talking about the clothes themselves. The fashion industry's recent obsession with showing every step of the creative process behind a garment, from farmer to atelier to runway, has done a lot of legwork in improving the reputation of luxury fashion's offerings. The recent obsession with couture especially is a big part of the puzzle, because these collections are the pinnacle, the absolute best craftsmanship and quality these brands can create, and for transporting us into the wonder and imagination of a brand. It's hard to get excited when you see jeans and a shirt walking down the runway, but some of these dresses, my God, they do stop you in your tracks. It's the easiest answer fashion can come up with to the people asking, what are we paying luxury prices for? And we forget that most of what luxury is going to be selling is pretty tame when our algorithms are flooded with high quality glossy images of fairy tale inspired dresses floating down the runway. And it can sweeten our overall perception of a brand if we think the entire collection is going to have this much detail, this much thoughtfulness, as the examples we're seeing on the runway. But after the viral videos showing exactly how different the perception of luxury's quality can be from the real life example, I feel like it would be quite irresponsible to not go and see these clothes that we're talking about in real life if I wanted to give you a well-rounded analysis of whether fashion is luxury again. Now, I didn't feel quite confident enough to go into individual stores and look at the clothes and evaluate them whilst the attendants were staring directly at me. So instead, I decided to head to two of London's most iconic department stores and walk around the booths instead. And what did I find? Some really, really nice clothes. As someone who doesn't go and actually see and touch luxury clothes in real life often at all, trying some of these pieces on was a real treat compared to where I normally shop. The quality of a lot of these pieces could be seen when they were on the hanger, but trying some of them on, something about the weight of them, the stitching and the finishing details were impressive to me. And I was trying to find examples of bad quality and I did struggle. And yes, the price tags were eye-watering. My husband couldn't believe this Loewe skirt was £1,400, which fair enough. But by trying it on, you could just tell it didn't fit into Zara prices either. And as someone who really doesn't see themselves in designer pieces, this skirt could convert me. And that feeling kind of stood out to me because there were definitely brands where, although I appreciated the clothes, I would never have bought them for myself. And I think something being wearable and desirable is a pretty key component to success. Anyway, my main point being, there was a clear and noticeable quality gap between the clothes you can get from these brands and what you could get at Zara. That being said, however, there were 1 or 2 brands that I don't think passed the inspection. But before we expose them, let me tell you about a brand whose quality I do love. And that's the sponsor of today's video, Idol. Idol is a gorgeous fine jewelry brand, and they've been kind enough to send me some of their lovely pieces to keep and show you guys. I'm wearing their diamond stud earrings with the Lou diamond add-on, and you can take this little diamond out, but I've been absolutely loving them paired together. I've also got this solid gold chain double stacked with a Lena diamond pendant on one of them. Again, you can take the pendant off and just have the chains together, and I've also been loving that look, especially when I want something even more pared down. But I love how much impact the Lena adds, and I've been wearing it even more than I thought I would. All of the diamonds are lab grown, and the focus on craftsmanship is so easy to see. And I love that the brand has a heavy focus on sustainability and intention. Idol isn't about selling you something new every season, but about creating pieces that will grow with you and adapt to every stage of your life. Their approach feels very personal, which is luxury to me. I've been wearing these pieces for a few weeks now and playing around with layering them with my other jewelry, and I absolutely love how customizable everything is. It's luxury jewelry, but it also feels very wearable, just a little bit elevated to make you feel like you're wearing something special every day. I'm going to link all of the pieces I'm wearing in the description below, so you can go on the website and check it out for yourself. And thank you so much to the team at Idol for sponsoring this video. Okay, so back to the brands that I was not impressed with the quality of when doing my field trip. The first is probably going to be no surprise, but that was Miu Miu. I knew I absolutely had to go try on their viral fleece jacket after talking about it in a recent video and seeing people's reactions to it online. And I'm going to give you my review. Yes, it's very warm, but it feels like the kind of warmth you'd also be able to get from wrapping a bin bag around your shoulders. It's 100% polyester, and for this price tag, I felt like the texture of the jacket was just so off-putting for me personally. Maybe that's what some people want, but compared to an old Tommy Hilfiger fleece that my mum has had for years and years and has been worn to death and is 100% wool, I know which one I'd be picking. And also, one of you commented on the video I put this fleece in saying that the zip looks like such poor quality just based on the e-com shots you saw online. And I can confirm this to be exactly true. The first time I tried this zip on, I genuinely worried I was going to break the zip in front of the attendant because it just would not move. It was so stressful. She was staring at me for 2 awkward minutes and I'm struggling to get this thing zipped up, and I was about to just give up, and then it eventually gave. But she did not look surprised in the slightest. The other brand that failed the quality check is more of a surprise. Maybe just because I haven't seen this brand crop up in online discourse about bad quality. But given that we've confirmed Miu Miu was bad quality for me, it kind of does make sense that their parent group, Prada, also had some iffy pieces when I went to shop there. I was trying to really subtly point out the fraying and the bad stitching and the makeup stains and the sticky zips to my husband behind the camera because the attendant was right there. But compared to the other brands I saw that day, Prada's quality was very, very surprising. Granted, again, this is just one shopping trip of the brand. It might have just been bad luck on my part, but given that Miu Miu's quality has been questioned time and time again, and I experienced it for myself on the same shopping trip, it doesn't make a good case. And I think seeing these things in real life was especially jarring because so much of fashion's attention currently has been on proving their quality and their craftsmanship. Luxury fashion is definitely aware of the discourse online, and you can see they've understood that people are responding to deeper insights about material choices and what mills and factories the brands are using. Getting a closer look at the decisions that go into constructing a garment and the process behind that, and lapping up any kind of transparency about the people who make their clothing and the artisans that show this fashion is really a craft. But of course, a lot of that feeling of quality relies on the perception of a brand, and that mostly comes from online. So we're going to briefly flip back over to the other side of this analysis, the perception, and finish off with the 2 most important things I think brands have been focusing on. Number 1 being exclusivity. This scene from Emily in Paris going viral shows exactly why exclusivity is a more important luxury indicator than ever.
Prada, they're like chain stores in every wealthy town. If people want Muratori, they have to come to Rome. It keeps us special. And I like it that way.
Luxury brands are aware that exclusivity is starting to be conflated with things like personalization, with strong communities, with limited experiences like pop-ups, and they're leaning into these things hard as a result. And the second most important tactic luxury fashion has relied on for their marketing rebrand, although maybe it should be the first, because according to BOF, emotion is the top driver of desirability for luxury. And everything else we've talked about today fits back into brands creating emotion, because luxury ultimately comes from our perception of the brand and the product. The more we understand what a brand stands for, the more we can start to relate it to our values and our personalities and build that stronger connection. I think that's why, as Edward Enninful put it in an interview, so many of this January's shows felt like an expression of joy and optimism from creative directors, because they understood that that was what the world needed right now. And if you can harness powerful emotions like joy, then you can sell anything you want to. Okay, so time to put everything we've just talked about together and use it to evaluate which luxury brands have successfully rebranded and which ones haven't. I asked this question in preparation on my Instagram stories. There was a lot of calls for Balenciaga, which has found success recently with their amazing couture collections and by casting Hudson Williams. Also Calvin Klein with their iconic minimalist fashion, benefiting from the love story hype. And Coach, whose marketing tactics have been particularly successful amongst Gen Z. These are good examples, but I have a few brands in mind I think deserve a deeper look at as case studies to understand whether luxury fashion has successfully rebranded or not. The first on my list being, of course, Chanel. And I think it's because the brand has done so well with engaging in the culture and bringing back creativity, even down to showing little details in their clothing that people love to talk about on social media, or by bringing creators and journalists into their factory so that they can show their audiences what it's like behind the scenes at the places making some of their most iconic fabric. And of course, it was a genius move to bring in a creative director like Blazy to hype up the fashion crowd. It's clear social media is sold on the rebrand, but the buying numbers don't lie either. Leaked quarterly earnings showed their revenue jumped by 16%, significantly outperforming other luxury brands. And there were reports of a buying frenzy after their January fashion shows. The brand only returned to growth last year, but it's clear that Chanel has turned things around for now. Their best-selling item this year being the maxi flat bag is a good indicator, I think, of the brand's repositioning. The handbag has been spotted on celebrities everywhere, and a lot of people buying on social media have quoted things like versatility being the main draw for them. Second case study on my list, and Dior is a no-brainer. And I think the brand's revamp has proven how closely they're looking at luxury signifiers and almost tick them off. Showing off their craftsmanship, curating virality on social media and engaging with the culture every turn, and focusing heavily on their design and who it's for is working. Their quarterly results were less dramatic than Chanel. They only reported 3% organic growth. But I think this maybe feels a little bit more realistic, a little bit more sustainable. Either way, one of the most popular styles from Dior's shows was the bar jacket, which Jonathon reimagined in his recent shows by showing a shorter peplum version, which conjured Christian Dior's iconic flower woman in a playful contemporary key, according to critics. In other words, showing that they're dead set on bringing their heritage into the modern day. My third case study is maybe a little bit more surprising, but also highly mentioned on my Instagram stories, and that's Burberry. The brand has really managed to make a comeback from danger in recent years, and I really liked what I saw of Burberry when I looked at the pieces in person. I think the brand's done a really good job to tick off so many of these luxury revamp strategies. Now they're making sure to bring their heritage patterns, for which they're known for, into something more buzzy for social media. They're definitely listening to online discourse and bringing down the prices of certain pieces of theirs, and I think they're doing well to show show an appreciation and an understanding of the British culture from which they're built. Their quarterly earnings showed a 5% growth, and a younger customer base is working out for them. The company's strongest performing items are trench coats and handbags, which people see as luxury, but also everyday basics and kind of practical things that it's good to spend money on if you want it to last forever. And I think Burberry has proven that they understand the base of their identity by focusing on these things. And okay, finally, the last case study, the brand that I think has not done well to listen to the luxury conversations recently, and it might be controversial and it might be expected given what we've heard in this video, but it's Miu Miu. I think the brand now has so many issues to deal with the quality of their products, the reputation they have online, the fact that people think the brand is for paid influencers only, and the general sentiment that they've kind of dropped off in recent years from the pinnacle of what they once were. Social media seems to agree that the brand has lost its grip on the zeitgeist. Business of Fashion reported that the era of buying luxury purely for status and visibility, i.e., brands like Miu Miu, is giving way to something more personal, centered on identity, connection, and self-expression. I think that's why the perception of the brand is that it's stale right now, because Miu Miu doesn't feel like it exists outside of TikTok virality, if that makes sense. All of these brands have made it to the list index top 10, with Chanel and Dior sitting in the top 3, proving that the luxury rebrand is working and these strategies are working, and that maybe luxury is becoming more coveted again. However, it kind of does feel that all the brands have taken a page from the same playbook. It feels like they've all read the same industry reports and consumer insights into what luxury shoppers want, and they're just ticking these things off. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of a reminder that fashion is in a very delicate position right now, and it knows it, and every decision is so calculated. Whether those decisions are working or not is something we're still gonna have to wait and see for future seasons. But do I think luxury fashion is luxury again? I think it's getting there. And maybe a lot of that opinion is based off the marketing I'm seeing from brands and the one field trip I did. But I think they do seem to be hyper focused on showing the craftsmanship, the story behind the collections, and the story behind fashion as art and why it's worth investing in again. And I think those are things that are worth focusing on. Now, do I understand that the motives behind that is to make ridiculous amounts of money? Yes. Do I wish luxury fashion brands were tackling things like emission reductions and sustainability endeavors at the same time as they were tackling their rebrand? Of course, but that's not the point of this video, and my own ethical perceptions should not cloud my judgment about whether luxury fashion is being perceived as luxury again. So we'll focus on whether luxury fashion is doing what it's set out to do, which is rebrand luxury. And I think we're at the start of a few very long years for brands who are just starting to rebuild their reputation. There's a few experts who have also expressed the opinion that the luxury industry is going through the first few years of what might be a decade of disruptions and turbulence. And it's almost impossible to judge how fashion is doing in the middle of it all, and we almost need to wait till we get to the other side. But we did our best to break it down as it's happening. And with that, I think we've done a pretty well-rounded analysis of the state of luxury fashion in the first half of 2026. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, whether you agree with luxury fashion's rebranding and the brands that have done well and haven't. Real quick, if you like this topic, then I would highly recommend getting your hands on Sister Magazine Autumn Winter 2026-2027. This was so useful for verifying my research on the topic, solidifying my opinions, hearing industry experts give their own. And I really like the magazine, so you probably will too. Anyway, hope you have a lovely day, besties, and I see you in the next video. Bye.